Hey YouTube, welcome back to Vintage on Vintage. I'm Steve, and today I am going to do a VR for John Wade Boggs Fan. John just recently passed his 1,500th subscriber, so congratulations first and foremost, John. That's a fantastic achievement. Doesn't surprise me. John has a great channel. I love watching his channel. I love John's philosophy on collecting, the way he presents, and he's a great member of the community out there supporting people all the time. So congratulations, John, on passing 1,500 subscribers. What John asked us to do was he wanted to do a VR, and he wanted us to say if we could only pick one card in our whole collection, just one card, and keep it, what card would it be? And John, that's an impossible task, quite honestly. But I decided to take it on, and I looked through a ton of cards, and ultimately I did come to one card. So what I want to do is I'm going to share the process. I'm going to share a lot of the cards that I eliminated or looked at, and then finally I'm going to share the one card that I landed on. So I'm going to flip this camera and show you guys the one card I would keep out of my collection if I was only able to keep one card. All right, so as I started thinking about this, I think the first place you would probably go is it my most valuable cards? And for me, that's a little easier than most because I don't have a Henry Aaron rookie or a 1952 Mantle. If I did, those cards might make it to the top because I can completely understand how important those cards would be, and they would be, probably my favorite cards. I do have a couple cards of value. I have this 1957 Don Drysdale rookie card, and I also have this, 1971 Pete Maravich in a 9. So one's in a 7, one's in a 9. They're both beautiful cards. They're both really important to me. But ultimately, as much as I love these cards, they're not the ones I would choose if I had to only pick one card. So my next question is, okay, well then do I go to, remember when you were a kid and you used to get those cereal boxes and enjoy pulling the cards? Would it be one of these 3D cards, this, Bob Gibson, or an Amos Otis, or a Steve Garvey, or an Eddie Collins card? Used to love getting those cards, making my mom buy the boxes of cereal. But as much as I love those cards and I never want to get rid of them, they still weren't the answer to that question. So then I started going down the path of what about my favorite teams and my favorite players growing up? Would it be a Deacon Jones card, right, of my Rams, or say a Willie Davis card of my Dodgers back in the 60s? Or if I'm going along the Dodger road, maybe it's Steve Garvey, who was a great player for my Dodgers. Or my all-time favorite basketball player, Jerry West, for the Lakers. All of these are great cards. They all remind me of my childhood, which is getting closer, because why I collect is really about memories. So we're starting to get down that path. The next thing I would ask is maybe it's just a card that every time you look at it, you just stop. Like this card right here. This is not an overly valuable card. This is a Tom Brady card, one of the few I own of Tom Brady. But I love this card. I just think it's the coolest looking card. I like the white. I like the coloring. I love the Patriots throwback uniforms. I love this card. Or is it this card, this, Lance Allworth, which, every time I look at this card, I think it's one of the most beautiful cards I own. The color, it's vibrant, it's beautiful. He's a great player. Or is it this card, which is one of my favorite cards of all time, probably my favorite Clemente base card. I love the 71 look on Clemente, the color scheme. Is it one of those cards? The next thing I had to ask myself, well, is it cards that were given to me as a present? Like this Harry Kane card that my daughter gave me, my only soccer card that I own. My daughter gave this to me when she studied abroad, and she brought it back for me, which I thought was really cool. Or this Willie Mays, 61 Mays that my daughter gave to me for Father's Day. That holds a special place in my heart. Or, you know, the 66 of my favorite player, Henry Aaron, that my wife gave me for our anniversary. So those are all gifts that are near and dear to me that definitely had to make the list when I had to take into consideration my favorite card. Or is it just the first Ted Williams card you ever owned? Or the first Mickey Mantle card you ever owned? You know, I never thought I would own either of these guys. And now I own them both, and I'm pretty excited about it. And those are definitely came into consideration when I was making this decision. There's also the childhood cards that you've had your whole life that you hung on to and you graded and you were excited to get them back, like this 72 Henry Aaron. You know, I'm the only person that's ever owned this card. I ripped this one pack fresh. That's pretty cool. Or maybe it's the Walter Payton rookie card that I ripped back in 1976. Another card that I've had my whole life. Or maybe it's the 1972 Julius Erving rookie card. I mean, all three of these cards, I'm the only person that's ever owned them. That makes it special, and they go with me everywhere I go. Or is it the cards that give you some sentimental value, like this card that I've shared with you guys before? This is that Ed Matthews that my dad gave me, that my sister and I got in a fight and it got torn, and I taped it up, and I've had it my whole life. You know, I've since replaced it with a graded version, but you know, this card, it was the oldest card I owned for a most of my life, to be quite honest with you. And you know, it was a Hall of Famer that, you know, when I shared cards with my friends, they were envious of the fact that I had that card. Or is it this card, one of my favorite Clemente cards? And I've shared this one too. This is the one that has the pinhole up here where my mom put this thing on a corkboard. And, you know, and this card, at the time I probably wasn't happy, but this card reminds me of my mom. You know, my mom has since passed. And, you know, when my parents got divorced, my mom made a lot of sacrifices to make sure that my sister and I were able to have the lives that we have today. And, you know, I miss my mom dearly. I respect her, and you know, this card just reminds me of her. So I have since got a graded version of this, but I'll never get rid of this card because, you know, it reminds me of my mom. So all those cards came into consideration, and then when I finally just figured it out, the one card, and this is the funny one, it's not the most valuable card I own, but the one card that probably represents my collecting, and the one card I would probably keep is this card right here for a number of reasons. I think I've told you guys before, I was born in 1960, tail end of 60, like almost 61. And so, you know, in 68, 69, 70, 71, you know, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and I was just starting to collect cards, these were the three best players of that generation. And, you know, I love the 60s and I love the 70s. You know, the 60s, for me, I know everybody loves the 50s, and I love them also, but, you know, the 60s is the first decade where that was fully integrated, right? And, you know, on top of that, you got expansion, and on top of that, you got divisional play towards the end. But more importantly, like, this card would probably evokes the most memories of my childhood, and my childhood is why I collect cards. It's what I loved to do then. It reminds me of happy times and times when you were carefree and a kid, and that's what you did. You rode with your buddies down to the store to pick up cards. You know, and this card has a lot of different meanings for me. First and foremost, you know, when I was growing up, there was no ESPN yet, right? And, you know, you were most likely, although you liked baseball, and it was the king sport, by the way, back in the 60s, still ahead of football and or basketball, but you were most likely either a National League fan or an American League fan, and I was a National League fan because I was a Dodger fan. And then when you look at the players on this card and what they represent, To the far right, you've got Willie Mays, and he's the one I like least on this card, and we'll get to that in a minute, but he was also possibly the best player on this card. I mean, towards 68, 69, 70, his career was starting to wind down, but he was Willie Mays. You knew who he was. He was on TV shows. He had a song made after him. You know, most people would say if he wasn't the best player of his generation, he may be the best player that ever played the game. So Willie Mays was important. The other thing, and the reason I couldn't like Mays as much, is because he's a Giant, and I'm a Dodger fan, right? So, you know, the Giant-Dodger rivalry was second to none. It was as big as there was out there. And rivalries back then are different than I think they are today. I think the fans still have rivalries. But back then, the players had rivalries. I think with free agency and the amount of money guys make, they're a lot friendlier. Back then, you know, it was important. You played with these same guys the majority of your career. And when you didn't make the playoffs, it cost you money. Or when you needed to make the World Series, because those checks were important, because a lot of these guys, not these three, but a lot of players back then held other jobs they needed to. And then if you look to the guy on the far left, right, you've got Roberto Clemente, and he was an amazing ball player. He won 4 batting titles in the 60s. I think, 69, 70, 71, I think he had 3 years where he was 340 or 350 batting average. And as a kid, that jumped out, right? Once again, there was no Sports Center back in the day for me. So it was, Sport Magazine, Sports Illustrated, reading the newspaper, Game of the Week, This Week in Baseball, and the World Series. And the World Series, specifically for me, 69, 70, 71, I vividly remember when the Mets upset the Orioles, and you saw the Swoboda and AG catches. Or the next year when Brooks Robinson was just a human vacuum cleaner, making some of the best defensive highlights. Or the following year when Roberto Clemente was just the best guy on the field. He was the best player out there, offensively, defensively, that cannon of an arm. He was it. And then, I can vividly remember as a kid sitting in our living room when the news broke that Roberto Clemente's plane had gone down. And, they searched for him and for the next couple days. And it was pretty devastating, because as an 11 or 12-year-old kid, your sports heroes at the time were like, they were like Batman and Robin. They were superheroes. They weren't mortals. And to lose somebody like Clemente was a big deal. And then there's the guy in the middle, Henry Aaron, my favorite player of all time. As a Dodger fan, when I started watching the game, Koufax had retired. The Dodgers teams were good, but they didn't have any superstars. You had Willie Davis, who I shared earlier, but you didn't have any superstars. And I gravitated towards Henry Aaron because at the time, I think it was from 68 through like 70, 71, Aaron averaged 40 home runs a year. He was chasing Babe Ruth's record. When my friends and we would take t-shirts and we would put numbers on them. And I always picked 44 because Henry Aaron and Jerry West were my two favorite athletes, and they both wore the same number. And when we played wiffle ball, I was Henry Aaron. That's who I wanted to be. And then I remember sitting in that same living room watching Al Downing throw that pitch to Henry Aaron and him driving it to deep left, Bill Buckner trying to climb the fence, Tom House making the catch in the bullpen, Aaron rounding the bases, fans running on the field, the celebration afterwards with his mom. I remember watching that and just, thinking how cool it was. So for me, I collect because of the moments, the memories that it brings me back. And this one card is probably, the epitome of why I collect. It's everything about my childhood, brings back all those memories. So if I could only look at one card for the rest of my life, John, this would be it. This is my card. So this was a fun video to make. Wasn't easy, took a while, but it was fun. Congratulations again, John, on reaching 1,500 subs. Love the channel. If you guys haven't for any reason, seen John, check it out. You'll love it. You'll definitely sub it. So thank you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Stay safe, keep collecting, and we will talk again soon.